Chapter 4 of the Law on Sales, the obligations of the vendor. Article 1495 provides that the vendor is bound to transfer the ownership of and deliver as well as warrant the thing which is the object of the sale. In simple terms, the seller has three main obligations under this article. First is to transfer ownership. This is a non-negotiable obligation. The seller must pass the ownership to the buyer. This means the seller must ensure that the legal title passes to the buyer. The vendor need not be the owner of a thing at the time of the perfection of the contract of sale. It is sufficient that he has a right to transfer the ownership thereof at the time it is delivered. Second is to deliver the thing sold. Delivery is essential. Without it, ownership does not pass. Delivery is a derivative mode of acquiring ownership, by virtue of which one who has the right and intention to alienate a corporeal thing transmit it by virtue of just title to one who accepts the same. Delivery can be actual or constructive, and it places the buyer in control and possession of the property. The question now, what happens when the seller fails to deliver at a stipulated period and such period is of the essence of the contract? The answer would be is that the seller has no right to demand the payment of the price. Another question is that when the delay is excused, if the failure to deliver on time is not due to the seller's fault, then the delay may be excused. For instance, if the buyer himself failed to provide necessary credit or arrangement for transporting the goods, the seller cannot be blamed. What is the effect of non-delivery? The buyer may ask for the resolution or rescission of the contract. The duty to deliver at execution sales, normally under Article 1495, the vendor must deliver the thing sold immediately. But in the execution sales, the rule is different. When property is sold at an execution sale, the judgment debtor is not required to deliver the property right away. Why? Because the law grants him a one-year redemption period. During this time, the debtor can redeem the property by paying the required amount. Therefore, the buyer at the auction sale cannot immediately take physical possession of the property. If the buyer insists on taking possession before the redemption period expires, the judgment debtor may file an action for forcible entry. The debtor would be entitled to recover the possession and damages. However, once the redemption period has expired, the debtor can only recover damages, not possession. Another important point, the redemption period does not start from the date of the auction itself. Instead, it begins from the registration of the sale in the Register of Deeds. This ensures that delinquent registered owner as well as third parties are properly notified that the property has been sold. The third obligation under this article is to warrant the thing sold. The seller guarantees that the buyer will not be evicted and that the item has no hidden defects. This warranty, however, can be waived or modified. Other obligations of the vendor, which can be found in other provisions of the Civil Code, is to take care of the thing until delivery. From perfection of the contract until delivery, the seller must take care of the item. The standard of care here is diligence of a good father of a family, meaning ordinary prudence. But can the parties agree to a different standard? The answer is yes, because obligations may be modified by stipulation, provided that they do not violate law, morals, or public policy. Another obligation is to pay for the expenses of the date of sale unless otherwise stipulated. By default, the seller shoulders the cost of the instrument of sale unless the parties agrees otherwise. Lastly, to deliver the fruits of the thing. The buyer is entitled to the fruits of the thing from the time the obligations to deliver arises. Article 1496 provides that the ownership of a thing sold is acquired by the vendee from the moment it is delivered to him in any of the ways specified in Article 1497 to 1501 or in any other manner signifying an agreement that the possession is transferred from the vendor to the vendee. Article 1496 tells us when ownership is actually transferred. It says that the ownership of a thing sold is acquired by the vendee from the moment it is delivered, whether by actual delivery or constructive delivery, or in any other manner signifying an agreement that the possession is transferred from the vendor to the vendee. So the general rule is that in a contract of sale, the buyer becomes the owner of the thing sold only when it is delivered. In essence, delivery is the operative act that transfers ownership. The contract of sale itself creates the obligation to deliver, but ownership passes only upon delivery. Exception to that rule is that if the delivery has already been made, the seller may reserve ownership if the contract says so. Ownership may still remain with the seller if the contract says ownership is reserved until full payment. The modes of delivery are either actual or real delivery by constructive or legal delivery. Actual delivery means that the seller physically hand over the thing to the buyer. Constructive delivery is delivery recognized by law even without handover. It takes several forms as shown on the screen. So this is discussed comprehensively in the next article and in the next reporter. So third is acquired in any other manner signifying an agreement. So this means that the law allows flexibility. Any act agreed upon by the parties that clearly shows transfer of ownership and possession is valid. Example, the parties agree that the ownership passes once payment is made even before physical delivery.
From our previous discussions, we know that delivery is the mode by which the seller transfers ownership to the buyer. But the question now is, how is delivery actually made? So this brings us to the two forms of delivery as mentioned in Article 1477, that is actual or real delivery and constructive delivery. Article 1497 provides that the thing sold shall be understood as delivered when it is placed in the control and possession of the vendee. So this actually refers to real delivery, where the delivery takes place through physical transfer. So in terms of movables, there is material delivery of the thing. So for example, Anna buys a laptop from Ben, then Ben hands the laptop to Anna. So this only means that the seller physically hands the object to the buyer. For immovable properties, that is physically placing the property under the buyer's control and possession, provided it will be done in the presence and with the consent of the vendor. For example, Anna buys a small house from Ben. On the agreed date, Ben meets Anna at the property, opens the gate, and hands her the keys. Anna then enters the house, brings in her belongings, and begins staying there. So, in short, actual delivery is the transfer of physical possession from the seller to the buyer. When physical transfer does not occur, the law recognizes constructive delivery, which uses a symbol, document, or act to represent the transfer of possession and ownership. So, one major type under constructive delivery is the symbolic delivery, which is also called traditio symbolica. So, symbolic delivery is effected when, in order to realize the delivery, the parties avail of a sign or symbol to represent the thing which is to be delivered. So there are two forms of symbolic delivery. First is by legal formalities, that is paragraph 1 of Article 1498, and then delivery of keys or traditio clavium, that is paragraph 2 of Article 1498. So by legal formalities, when the sale is made through a public instrument, the execution thereof shall be equivalent to the delivery of the thing which is the object of the contract. This applies to both movable and immovable property. This gives rise to a prima facie presumption of delivery. But presumptive delivery by the execution of a public instrument can be negated under these circumstances. First, when the instrument itself expresses or implies that it was not the intention of the parties to effect delivery. For example, when a fixed date is specified at which the vendee must take possession of the thing. Second, when there is an impediment that may prevent the passing of the property from the hands of the vendor to the vendee, as when a third person was actually in possession of the thing and objecting thereto. For example, Anna signed a notarized deed of sale transferring her industrial generator to Ben, but the generator was still in the custody of a repair shop that refused to release it to either of them. So, since Anna could not actually deliver control or possession, the presumption of delivery arising from the public instrument is negated, and no real delivery to Ben is deemed to have taken place. Another example, Carla sold a piece of land to Jago through a notarized deed of sale, but the land was still occupied by tenants who refused to vacate, and the title was never physically handed over. Because Jago never obtained actual possession, the prima facie presumption of delivery arising from the public instrument is negated. Mila sold her car to Ramon through a notarized deed of sale, but the car remained in the garage of her cousin, and Ramon never actually took possession of it. Although the deed gives rise to a prima facie presumption of delivery, that presumption is negated because Ramon never obtained physical control or possession of the car. Next is delivery of keys or traditio clavium. This is the delivery of a movable property made by the delivery of the keys of the place or depository where it is stored or kept. So the keys serve as a symbol of access and control, making this a valid form of constructive delivery. For example, Anna sold her bicycle stored in a locked shed and gave Ben the key to the shed. By handing over the key, Anna is considered to have to have delivered the bicycle to Ben.
Article 1499. The delivery of movable property may likewise be made by the mere consent or agreement of the contracting parties if the thing sold cannot be transferred to the possession of the vendee at the time of the sale, or if the latter already had it in his possession for any other reason. This provision discusses situations where physical delivery of movable property is not feasible or necessary. Under this provision, we have two kinds of delivery. The first one is what we call traditio lunga mano. This is delivery of movable by mere consent or agreement of the parties if the thing cannot be transferred to the possession of the vendee at the time of sale. This is literally means delivery by longhand, usually made by pointing at the thing. This kind of delivery means transfer of possession without physical handling over the object. So how it works, the owner points out or indicates the item to the vendee, giving them the ability to take control. So I have here an example. Gavin sold to Gian the fruits of 10 mango trees in his farm. Since Gavin has many mango trees, he points to Gian the 10 trees which are referred to in the contract of sale. So here, seller shows the buyer the mango trees in his farm and grants permission to take them. The second kind of delivery under this provision is what we call traditio brevi manu. This is delivery that takes place when the vendee is already in the possession of the thing sold even before the sale, and thereafter continues in possession thereof in the concept of an owner. This applies to movables only, and this traditio brevi manu means delivery by shorthand. So traditio brevi manu occurs when someone already holding an item, it could be as a borrower, a lessee, or a depositary, and it becomes its owner. So, for example, Yanix Rent a Car Corporation, or Yanix, leases its Toyota Altis car to Noel for a period of 2 days. Before the end of the second day, Yanix sells the car to Noel, with Noel retaining physical possession of the car. Noel was already in physical possession of the car as lessee at the time of sale. He need not to turn over the physical possession of the car to Yannex, and for Yannex to turn over again its possession to Noel to effect the delivery to Noel. So upon the execution of the deed of sale, Noel continues its possession of the car in the concept of an owner. So in this kind of delivery, no physical transfer is needed since the transferee already has possession. In fact, only the legal basis changes. So in the example, the person renting the car later buys it. So possession shifts instantly without new delivery. So let's proceed now to Article 1500. This is what we called Traditio Constitutum Possessorium. This is another delivery. This is delivery that takes place when the vendor continues in possession of the thing sold after the sale, but in another capacity, such as that of lessee or depositary. This applies to both movable and immovable property. Traditio Constitutum Possessorium means, or it is the reverse of Traditio Brevi Manu. So the owner transfers ownership but retains physical possession under a new legal title. So the transferor continues to hold the item, but now as tenant, borrower, or custodian for the new owner. So I have her example. Gavin sells his house and lot to Arabelle. Simultaneously with the sale, Simultaneous with the sale, the parties execute a contract for the lease of house by Gavin for a period of 1 week. Thus, Gavin continues in physical possession after the sale, but already in the concept of lessee. There is deemed a delivery of the house and lot to Arabelle, although Gavin did not physically turn over the property to him. So here, the landowner or the house and lot owner sells his house and lot, but remains living there as a lessee. So that's all for my assigned report. Thank you.
Article 1501. With respect to incorporeal property, the provisions of the first paragraph of Article 1498 shall govern. In any other case wherein the said provisions are not applicable, the placing of the titles of ownership in the possession of the vendee, or the use of the vendee of his rights, with the vendor's consent, shall be understood as a delivery. This article relates to 1498, paragraph 1 only. Like when the sale is made through a public instrument, the execution thereof shall be equivalent to delivery. Now, when we speak of real property, there's land, real estate, rights, and privileges. It's corporeal if it's movable and immovable. If it's incorporeal, it speaks of intangible properties. These have legal and economic value but lack physical existence. These are intangible, so you cannot see, you cannot feel, but it may be inherited. Examples are easements, shares of stocks, intellectual properties like patents, copyrights, license, and trademarks. There are two ways of effecting constructive tradition in incorporeal property. We have execution of public instrument and quasi-judicial. So for the execution of public instrument, we all know that it has to be notarized by a lawyer. And there is also other legal formalities, like say, for example, in this incorporeal property, we have shares of stocks. These are incorporeal property. So shares of stocks are physically identified through certificates of stocks. And certificate of stocks will have to be endorsed certificate and registered in the corporation's book for it to be termed as a legal formality delivery. Now, for the quasi judicial, where the ownership is transferred through consent and the delivery of the document or other symbolic means, there are two ways by placing the titles of ownership in the possession of the buyer. So, in our previous example like symbolic transfer, instead of handing over the actual right, ownership is transferred by giving the buyer a document that legally represents it. Example, the giving of the certificate of stock. So it's not really binding yet to third party because it hasn't been registered to the corporation's book. But if you're handing over your shares of stock through the physical existence of the certificate of stock, that is also already considered as a quasi-judicial through placing of titles of ownership. The second way of quasi-judicial is the use and enjoyment of the buyer of the rights pertaining to the incorporeal property. Let's say, for example, the owner consents that you may start using the right of way or the easement. So that's the use of his own lot. Then he consents you to use it. So that's your right of way. So that would be all for Article 1501. For Article 1502, it speaks of a contract of sale on trial, and that's the first paragraph of Article 1502. And the second paragraph defines or speaks of sale on trial, approval, or satisfaction. So, or the first paragraph was about sale on return. Now, we all know that Article 1477 and Article 1496 are the general rules which provides the manner of transfer of ownership. So like Article 1477 was about ownership being transferred through actual or constructive delivery. And then Article 1496, which provides all the six ways of effecting the constructive delivery. So, like the execution of the public instrument, the judicial symbolica, longa manu, brevi manu, constitutum possessorium, and the quasi-judicial. Now, a contract of sale on trial, approval, or satisfaction, which is the second paragraph of the Article 1502, is an exception to the general rule, which is the Article 1477 and Article 1496. Then there is also other exception, which is the express reservation, as discussed in Article 1478, and the implied reservation, which shall be discussed on the next Article 1502. So for this Article 15, the next Article 1502 is the implied reservation. For 1502, it speaks of sale on return and sale on approval. This table shows the comparison of both. You may pause the video and go through with the distinctions as to its aspects. Now, I'd like to emphasize the aspect as to the transfer of ownership. In sale or return, under sale or return, ownership immediately passes to the buyer. However, while in a contract of sale on trial, approval, or satisfaction, ownership remains in the seller until the buyer signifies his approval or acceptance to the seller. Now, this may also mean any other act adopting the transaction, like he's using it already or reselling it to another person. So that constitutes an absolute sale already. Now, or an absolute acceptance of the delivery. So for the bottom part, we have the aspect of when the object deteriorates, no fault of the buyer or fortuitous events. For sale on return, buyer bears the loss, of course, because ownership has already been transferred to him upon delivery. While on sale on trial, approval, or satisfaction, buyer can still return for as long as it's still within the period of returning. Now, for the last part, buyer abused, misused, or is negligent on the condition of the thing. So for under sale and return, buyer has no right at all. And this also goes the same way with the sale on trial, approval, or satisfaction. Now it has to be noted that for the contract of sale on trial, approval, or satisfaction, buyer cannot accept part and reject the rest of the goods. So, like say, a seller sells marbles of different colors. The buyer cannot return red ones or keep the red ones and return the blue, the orange, and other other colors of the marbles. That cannot be because on this sale on trial, approval, or satisfaction, the goods are essentially treated as a single indivisible unit when it was sold, and then the entire transaction is depending on the buyer's satisfaction with the complete delivery of the entire object, of the entire item or product. So that would be all for Article 1502. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Roel Julay Varno. I am here to discuss about Article 1503, the contract of sale of specific goods. There are 4 paragraphs of this article, and let's dish it out per paragraph. So this article relates to a sale of specific goods, as mentioned in Article 1494 and Article 1636 of the New Civil Code of the Philippines. So, first paragraph, where there is a contract of sale of specific goods, the seller may, by the terms of the contract, reserve the right to possession or ownership in the goods until certain conditions have been fulfilled. The right to possession or ownership may be thus reserved notwithstanding the delivery of the goods to the buyer or to a carrier or other bailiff for the purpose of transmission to the buyer. This article, first paragraph, as a general rule, the ownership in the goods sold passes to the buyer upon their delivery to the carrier or other bailey. However, there are certain exceptions, and they are first, if a contrary intention appears by the terms of the contract, so there is contrary of intention, as mentioned in paragraph 1 of Article 1523, just like if there is the buyer becomes insolvent, no? Another one is in the first paragraph of this 1503, no? Then the second exception is in the cases provided in the second and third paragraphs of Article 1523. So what are these cases? First, seller stops goods already in transit by notifying the carrier. So the requirement here is notice arrives before delivery. So what's the effect? Delivery to buyer is suspended. Second case, carrier must hold goods for seller. So it becomes now a depository. So the requirement here, notice was received in time. So what's the effect? Carrier now liable as depository, not as carrier. And the third exception is in the cases provided in the first, second, and third paragraph of this article. So what are these cases? First, in paragraph 1, reservation of ownership or possession. Second, goods deliverable to seller in the bill of lading. Third, bill of lading deliverable to buyer but held by seller. So these are the exceptions, no, in this article 1503, particularly in paragraph 1. Okay, let's continue, no, the second paragraph of article 1503 as part of the exception in the seller's right of the possession or ownership under the contract of sale of specific goods. So, second paragraph, where goods are shipped and by the bill of lading the goods are deliverable to the seller or his agent or to the order of the seller or of his agent, the seller thereby reserves the ownership in the goods. But if, except for the form of the bill of lading, the ownership would have passed to the buyer on shipment of the goods, the seller's property in the goods shall be deemed to be only for the purpose of securing performance by the buyer of his obligations under the contract. So this paragraph discusses shipments and bills of lading. So if the bill of lading says deliver to the seller or seller's order, the seller keeps ownership. But if the contract normally transfer ownership upon shipment, then the seller's ownership is only for security, like collateral, to ensure the buyer pays. Third paragraph, as part of the exception of the seller's right of the possession and ownership under the contract of sale of specific goods, where goods are shipped and by the bill of lading the goods are deliverable to the order of the buyer or of his agent, but possession of the bill of lading is retained by the seller's agent, the seller thereby reserves a right to the possession of the goods as against the buyer. So here, the goods may be consigned to the buyer, but if the seller keeps the bill of lading, the buyer cannot get the goods. The seller still controls the goods. So the buyer must pay first to get the document. So let's jump on to the fourth paragraph of Article 1503. So I will not read it in details, no. I will just explain here what does it mean. So this fourth paragraph ensures protection for the seller. This part involves the use of a bill of exchange together with a bill of lading. So if buyer refuses to pay the bill of exchange, like a check or draft, he must return the bill of lading. Holding it illegally gives him no rights. So, but if a third person buys the bill of lading in good faith, that third person becomes the lawful owner, even if the seller has not paid. Article 1503 as a whole protects sellers by allowing them to retain ownership or control until certain conditions are met. Katong ibang mention ako a while ago, no? Including payment, especially during shipment. It also protects third persons who act in good faith when dealing with negotiable bills of lading. So, to sum up, no, to wrap up, Article 1503 has these important points. First, seller. The first paragraph, seller may reserve ownership of or possession until conditions are fulfilled. So there are conditions as I mentioned in my presentation. Second, bill of lading made deliverable to the seller means seller keeps ownership. And third, bill of lading made deliverable to the buyer, but the seller retains the document means the seller retains the right to possession. And seller sends bills of exchange plus bill of lading together, so buyer must return the bill of lading if he does not pay. And lastly, the rights of third parties, no, katong good faith purchasers. So that ends for Article 1503. So let's now discuss Article 1504, no, in the Civil Code. As a general rule, if the thing is lost by a fortuitous event, the risk is borne by the owner of the thing at the time of the loss under the principle of res spirit domino, meaning the thing perishes for the owner. However, this article contradicts to this principle. So before discussing about the conflicts, the contradiction of this article to this principle and to Article 1480, let's have first discuss the exceptions of Article 1504. No. First exception, where delivery of the goods has been made to the buyer or to a bailiff for the buyer in pursuance of the contract, and the ownership in the goods has been retained by the seller merely to secure performance by the buyer of his obligations under the contract, the goods are the buyer's risk from the time of such delivery. So what does it mean? Even if the seller retains ownership, example in a sale of installment with ownership reserved, if the goods have already been delivered, the risk passes to the buyer. So here, risk follows possession, not ownership. Okay. Second exception of this article, where actual delivery has been delayed through the fault of either the buyer or the seller, the goods are at the risk of the party in fault. So self-explanatory, no? So meaning if delivery is delayed and the delay is caused by either party, so either party, the buyer or the seller, the party at fault bears the risk. So in this case, no, the law punishes the party at fault. So let's discuss the conflict between Article 1480 and 1504. Kay, as mentioned a while ago, no, under the principle of res spirit domino, as a general rule, if the thing is lost by fortuitous event, the risk is borne by the owner of the thing at the time of the loss under the principle of res spirit domino. However, this 1504, no, under 1504 in the first paragraph, unless otherwise agreed, the goods remain at the seller's risk until the ownership therein is transferred to the buyer. But when the ownership therein is transferred to the buyer, the goods are the buyer's risk whether actual delivery has been made or not. So this provision, the first paragraph, now contradicts with Article 1480 of the Civil Code, no, which mentioned that if the thing sold is lost after perfection of the contract but before its delivery, that is even before the ownership is transferred to the buyer, the risk of loss by fortuitous event without the seller's fault is borne by the buyer as an exception to the rule of res spirit domino. Consequently, the buyer's obligation to pay the price subsists if he has not yet paid the same, or if he had paid it, he cannot recover it from the seller, although the latter's obligation to deliver the thing is extinguished by its loss. So, however, the first paragraph of Article 1504, which has been inserted in our Civil Code, presents a contrary rule taken from the American law on sales, particularly in Section 22 of the Uniform Sales Act. It provides that unless otherwise agreed, the goods remain at the seller's risk until the ownership therein is transferred to the buyer. By Article 1480, as already pointed out, the risk of loss of the thing after perfection is shifted from the seller to the buyer, even though the buyer has not yet acquired ownership thereof. So to find remedy, to find solution, to avoid the conflict of these two articles, no, Article 15 Series 4 should be restricted in its application to sale of goods, as this term is defined in Article 1636 and 1480 to sales of things which cannot be called as goods, as for the example to sales of real estate. This would make Article 1480 the general rule on risk of loss and Article 1504 the exception. So means to say, no, Article 1504 is an exception of Article 1480 of the new Civil Code. So by this conclusion, it is claimed the cardinal rule of statutory construction that all provisions of a law should, as much as possible, be given effect is satisfied. For to say that there is an irreconcilable conflict between Article 1480 and 1504 is to render either of them useless. So again, uh, just to reiterate, no, with these conflicts, with this contradiction, Article 1504 now becomes the exception of Article 1480.
Article 1505. Sale by a non-owner. The article states, subject to the provisions of this title, where goods are sold by a person who is not the owner thereof, and who does not sell them under authority or with the consent of the owner, the buyer acquires no better title to the goods than the seller had, unless the owner of the good is by his conduct precluded from denying the seller's authority to sell. Nothing in this title, however, shall affect the following: the provisions of any Factors Acts, recording laws, or any provision or other provision of the law enabling the apparent owner of the goods to dispose of them as if he were the true owner thereof. The validity of any contract of sale under statutory power of sale, mm, or under the order of a court of competent jurisdiction. Purchases made in a merchant store or in fairs or markets in accordance with the Code of Commerce and special laws. Article 1505 embodies the principle nemo dat quod non habet, which means no one can give what he does not have. In a contract of sale, ownership is transferred from the seller to the buyer. But if the seller is not the owner and has no authority from the owner, the buyer generally acquires no better title than the seller had. In general rule, no ownership can be transferred by a non-owner. It means if you buy goods from someone who is not the owner and has no authority, you do not become the owner. This is to protect true owners, prevents fraud and unauthorized transactions, upholds property rights, reinforces the requirement of perfect title before conveying ownership. However, the law provides exceptions to protect commercial transactions and innocent buyers. Now, exemptions where buyer gets good title are the following. First, estoppel by owner's conduct, which means if the owner's actions lead others to believe the seller has authority, the owner cannot later deny it. For example, Pedro lets Juan display his car for sale and even tells people Juan can sell it. Buyer in good faith acquires title or valid title. Second exemption is statutory power or court order. Means sale made under the legal authority or judicial order is valid. For example, auction sale under the foreclosure or execution. And last exemption is the purchases in merchants, store, fairs, or markets, wherein it means buyer in good faith is protected under the Code of Commerce. For example, buying goods from a legitimate store even if seller lack the title. These exemptions ensures that commerce flows smoothly and innocent buyers are not penalized for trusting legitimate sellers. Article 1506. Sale by seller with voidable title. The article states where the seller of goods has a voidable title thereto, but his title has not been voided at the time of the sale, the buyer acquires a good title to the goods, provided he buys them in good faith, for value, and without notice of the seller's defect title. Article 1506 deals with a different situation. Here, the seller has avoidable title, meaning he acquired the goods through fraud, mistakes, or or undue influence. His title is valid until annulled. If he sells the goods before annulment and the buyer acts in good faith, pays value, and has no notice of the defect, the buyer acquires good title. Conditions for the buyer protection. The buyer acts in good faith, the buyer pays for value, and the buyer has no notice of defect in seller's title. Now, here an example. Carlos buys a car from Pedro using fraudulent documents. Pedro, unaware of the fraud, delivers the car to Carlos. This makes Carlos' title voidable because it was obtained through fraud, but it is still valid until annulled by Pedro. Our action here is before Pedro discovers the fraud and files an annulment case, Carlos sells the car to Maria. Maria pays the full price, acts in good faith, and has no knowledge of the fraud. The effect or legal effect here is that under Article 1506, Maria acquires a good title to the car because Carlos' title was voidable but not yet annulled. Maria bought for value, and Maria acted in good faith and had no notice of the defect. If we're going to compare or comparatively, Articles 1505 and 1506, in aspect, in the seller status, Article 1505 has no title, while Article 1506 has a voidable title. In buyer's protection, there is limited exemptions only in Article 1505, while in Article 1506, there is a strong if conditions are met. In principle, Article 1505 is anchored to the Nemo Code non-habit, while Article 1506 is into good faith prevails. Now, what does this mean for us in real life? We have to know that we should always verify ownership before buying. Buying from a reputable merchant offers legal protection, and good faith and due diligence are key to avoiding disputes. In summary, Articles 1505 and Articles 1506 strikes a balance between protecting ownership rights and protecting commercial stability. They remind us that while ownership is sacred, the law also safeguards innocent buyers who act in good faith.